Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the OGGM Adventures. It's about 9:30. It's the 10th day of August 2022. It's 70 degrees and sunny here at Site B. And yes, I am once again blatantly using a kitten to shill my vlog. Have I no shame? I think we know by now that I am a total sellout. And I don't have any shame. And I've got to keep it entertained because it's reached that stage of, well, it's been 2 weeks and now I want to destroy your house. So, yes, for the next several months, you'll be seeing a lot of this face on the vlog because I have to keep it entertained. Okay, we have some maths. Morning. This is going to involve numbers. So if that's something that bores you or you don't want to hear how sales are going in the world of our hobby, especially as it relates to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, you should probably stop watching this now because I'm going to say some rather poignant things and make some predictions and take a look at where 5th edition might be going under the stewardship of Wizards of the Coast and under the stewardship of third parties. And I know that there are certain individuals out there who refuse to believe anything other than that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is the single greatest role-playing game of all time and nothing will ever outsell it and it will never be replaced. And every other game other than 5th edition is just a bunch of dumb scrub clowns. So if you are one of those few individuals who think that 5th edition is the end-all be-all, then you should probably stop watching this. Those were a lot of words. Support me, green tea. I'm trying to get healthy. We have the Spring 2022 Top 5 Role-Playing Games as played on hobby channels. So this is in the ICv2, which is, I guess, the company that monitors how many games are being sold and how many games are being played on the various hobby channels slash virtual tabletops. So we have the Spring 2022 overall. There is a huge editorial error in this one. It's the first time I've ever seen them make this mistake. Usually they're pretty good, but this one is a huge editorial error. I'm kind of disappointed because even though I don't always agree with what these guys come up with, and a lot of people say these, polls and results mean nothing, and maybe they don't mean anything. I've never really noticed this huge of an editorial error before. So we're going to have to talk about that. So the top 5 role-playing games for Spring 2022 as of Hobby Channel Game Rankings. D&D 5th edition. Number 1, not a surprise. What is a surprise is the numbers. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yes, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is holding its spot at number 1. Number 2, Pathfinder. Okay, so here's the first editing mistake. Pathfinder 1 or Pathfinder 2? Which is being played more? Or are you just saying in general, Pathfinder, both versions, are currently running at number 2 on virtual tabletop hobby channels? I guess they've just lumped them together into Pathfinder. Number 3, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. All right, that's the second major editing problem in this. D&D can't be number 1 and number 3. Okay, there's only Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition or Dungeons & Dragons non-5th edition. All right, so D&D 5e cannot be number 1 and cannot be number 3. And it says Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, number 1, Wizards of the Coast. Pathfinder, we don't know which one. Paizo, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, Darrington Goodman. Okay, so I guess there has been a change in whoever is doing this because now, as opposed to previous polls and research, whoever this person is who is now doing the current ICv2's top 5 is not aware that Darrington Press and Goodman Games are separate from Wizards of the Coast. Are you one of those people who think that Wizards of the Coast owns Paizo, Darrington Press, Goodman Games, and Netflix? Because if you are, you're wrong. Do you just not understand the difference between the stuff that Darrington Press does and the stuff that Wizards of the Coast does? Because you can't list D&D 5e twice and then list D&D 5e as a product of Darrington Press. Darrington Press does not make Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The Wizards of the Coast makes Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Darrington Press made one 5e product, the Tal'Dorei guide thing that came out beginning of this year or towards the end of last year. I don't actually remember when it came out, but, it was recently, but not that recent. So it is technically a 5e book, though nowhere on it does it say Wizards of the Coast. It says Critical Role, and it has the 5 with a circle on it. But it definitely says it's Darrington Press / Darrington Press. And then they also list Goodman Games. Goodman Games didn't do anything with Darrington Press. So are they referring to something else? I mean, there was that other 5e unofficial stuff that came out, but that was Wizards of the Coast. And are you saying that the third most thing being played is the product made by Darrington Press and all the 5e product made by Goodman Games? At which point you're just basically saying third-party 5e products are holding the number 3 spot. But for some reason, you don't know the difference between Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition third-party. So if I had written this, I would have put Dungeons & Dragons number 1, Wizards of the Coast, whichever version of Pathfinder is being sold / played the most on the VTT market as number 2. And number 3, I would either have not put it as D&D 5e because that's misleading. I would have instead put, it's spam, so I'm not going to answer it. Something else. I would have phrased it differently because that's just badly written. Fuck off. Badly written. Okay? So, but what it's saying is third-party 5e products are currently holding the number 3 spot, which is cool. The number 4 spot is the G.I. Joe RPG from Renegade Games, which only just came out. I mean, it literally only came out, and it has already rushed to number 4 top 5 games being played on the virtual tabletops. And number 5 is the Power Rangers RPG from Renegade Game Studios. So the number 5 role-playing game being played on virtual tabletops right now is Power Rangers, which is strange considering that we know Power Rangers, the RPG, was an editorial nightmare, and Renegade Games really needs to release some errata for it. Hopefully they fixed all the mistakes in G.I. Joe, but still, let's just take a look. The D&D is number 1, Pathfinder, and third-party 5e products are number 2. Non-fantasy holds the spot at 4 and 5. Now, obviously, the quality of how these guys do their polls and do their research has dropped tremendously because just looking at this, it is just really poorly written and researched. And there are better ways to have said this. Okay? So the number 3 spot should be other 5e product or something like that. It should not say D&D 5e because you're misleading people to think that D&D 5e from Darrington Press is the same as D&D 5e from Wizards of the Coast, and it's not. And then you've got 4 and 5, which are basically both from the same company. So that could have just been said Renegade Games Studios products at number 4, and number 5 could have been something else, like Call of Cthulhu. But basically, it is showing us that while Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition from Wizards of the Coast is still number 1, all the other top spots are being taken up by 5e third party. Goodman Games, which has made way more stuff than Darrington Games for 5e, at number 3. Renegade Games at number 4. Pathfinder, some version of Pathfinder at number 2. Pathfinder, technically an OGL 3.5 D&D thing, but not really. But, Paizo is making third-party 5e product too. So this tells us that third-party 5e product is selling and being played almost as much, if not more, than D&D 5e from Wizards of the Coast, because we can combine Power Rangers and G.I. Joe into one and put them at number 4. We have Goodman Games and all the third-party stuff that Goodman Games has made for 5e, and the one thing... See, that's my problem with this, is Darrington Press only made one thing so far for 5e. So it shouldn't even be on there. It should just be Goodman Games, and oh yes, some people are playing Tal'Dorei. Yeah, so basically 5e, fantasy, third-party stuff from Goodman Games holding the spot at number 3. 5e, third-party... Power Rangers, even though it's not really 5e, but it is an OGL because it does use D20. But, the Essence D20 system is vaguely, barely 5e. It's really more its own thing, but it definitely counts as an OGL. So basically, these are all OGL, OSR, 5e third-party products that are selling great. Now, moving on to another thing, which is going to be even more maths, we have the numbers for Wizards of the Coast sales. And this is going to disappoint you a lot, but this is hard and facts, people. So I'm sorry, I don't make this shit up. I just report it and then laugh maniacally when we read it. So we have recently learned that Magic the Gathering counts for 80% of Wizards of the Coast's total sales. This should tell you that however big D&D is, Magic outstrips it by miles. So let us just end the perpetration of the continued myth that 5e is the number one source for Hasbro's money. 80% of the money Wizards of the Coast makes for Hasbro is Magic the Gathering, which means only 20% is D&D 5e as created by Wizards of the Coast. And that Wizards of the Coast D&D 5e is barely holding its number one spot in sales and virtual tabletop. Meanwhile, the third-party stuff is running up the hill. And yeah, I hate to say it, it's kicked Call of Cthulhu down to number 5. Why is this? This goes into a much deeper issue. And when we talked about the stuff that was being kickstarted and being sold right now, we talked about how there's a lot of product coming out, this third-party 5e, that's trying to take 5e in a different direction than Wizards of the Coast wants to take it. So there's 5e as it stands. There's 5e where Wizards of the Coast thinks we want it to be, Spelljammer, Radiant Citadel. And then there's 5e, which seems to be the direction everybody else wants to take it. And we can sort of divide that into two categories. A huge chunk is sort of wanting to go towards the grim, dark, Vossen, Morkborg, Warhammer style. And the other chunk sort of wants to take it in sort of the, experimental, whether it be steampunk, arcane punk, or, weird, eclectic, lesser-known takes. So this reminds me a lot of what we saw from the OGL. And say what you want about the OGL, it, in its own way, outdistanced D&D at the time. Now, of course, that had a lot of things in its favor. We had the 4th edition versus Pathfinder wars going on. And that allowed the OGL to sneak in and really chew up the available market. I mean, there was so many things coming out during that time period for the OGL. And so many games. I mean, I'm looking at my shelf right now, and I'd say a huge chunk of the games on my shelf are out because of the OGL. I mean, all my OSR games would not exist in the form that we have them now had the OGL not made OSR creators able to use those, the 6 stats and armor class and hit points. Dungeon Crawl Classics, Mutant Crawl Classics, Mutant and Masterminds, one of the greatest success stories from the OGL. I mean, 80% of my shelf is OGL products that would not have existed without the OGL. And now we're seeing the same thing with 5th. The 5th edition engine was put out there. Wizards of the Coast said, well, the OGL's already out there, so we can't stop making people from making 5e stuff as long as they follow the contract. And at first we didn't see a lot, but the last year or so we're seeing more and more third-party 5e stuff. And of those third-party 5e stuff, we have the stuff that is made specifically for 5e D&D, like the Goodman Games stuff. But then the rest of it, and, technically Power Rangers and Transformers and G.I. Joe are D20 games, so they do fall under OSR OGL, but the Essence D20 system is sort of its own thing. And, hopefully there will be some errata to fix the mistakes in Power Rangers. But it just goes to show there's a huge market for the nostalgia, whether that will maintain its pace or not, I don't know. But there's a huge market for people who want to play G.I. Joe. There's a huge market of people who want to play Power Rangers. There's a huge market for people who want to take that 5e engine in new and unusual directions. And we saw that in the list of all the Kickstarters. We see that in all the new products that are coming out. For every product that is a, fantasy D&D-esque module or adventure or addition to 5e, there are 3 other products that are taking the 5e engine in new, interesting ways. So again, we got 5e the engine. Then we got Wizards of the Coast D20 5e Fantasy, which is Dungeons and Dragons in name only, and the direction we think Wizards of the Coast thinks we want the game to go. But I think the general opinion is no, Wizards of the Coast, that's not the way we want the game to go. And that shows in the sales, and that shows in the fact that almost every product that has come out over the past 2 years, Wizards has completely abandoned within 2 weeks. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Radiant Citadel. Wizards of the Coast was plastering the web with articles and reviews and stuff for Radiant Citadel. Radiant Citadel has since completely vanished. It's not even on the shelf at my friendly local game store anymore, or at my Target. Same thing with Dragons of Stormwick Isle. Dragons of Stormwick Isle is a very unusual story because they made it available to Target first. Oh, look, now Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro and Target have a very special new relationship that's never existed before. No, that is bullshit. Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro has had a special relationship with Target for years through Magic. And the only reason Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro let Target have Dragons of Stormwick Isle first is they had to guarantee Wizards of the Coast a certain amount of Magic the Gathering purchases. And even then, the amount of targets that received Dragons of Stormwick Isle was limited. The amount of copies that each target received that received it at all was limited. And once those copies were gone, Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro is not replacing them. They're waiting till October. And within a week of it coming out, it came out August 1st, it's August 10th, and already only 2 or 3 people are talking about it, when 2 weeks ago or a week ago, everybody was talking about it. Everybody's talking about Dragons of Stormwick Isle and the stupid art and whether it's the kids or the not and how it's going to ruin the game. And now, nothing. Wizards of the Coast hasn't even said anything about it. They're talking about Spelljammer, which is coming out in a couple days. Wizards of the Coast is showing us that they do not have faith in the product. The second there's a bad review, the second they see those numbers start to drop below that 53%, they just abandon it. They stop talking about it. And we've seen this time and time and time and time again over the past 2, 3, 4 years. push the fuck out of a product, get the product on the shelf, wait for the reviews, wait for the sales, and if it does well, you continue to push it. But if it does poorly, like, I don't know, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Candlekeep, Radiant Citadel, it's gone. It doesn't exist. Wizards of the Coast doesn't even bring it up. They move on to the next thing as quickly as they can to make you forget that disaster. Meanwhile, all these other third-party 5e products are kicking ass. I hate to say it because I don't like to see my, Call of Cthulhu or my other beloved games get knocked down, but let's call a spade a spade. For whatever reason, the industry sees something in the 5e engine that is above and beyond what Wizards of the Coast meant it to be. There's the direction Wizards of the Coast is taking 5e because that's the way they think we want it to go. But the sales and the opinions and the reactions are showing us, no, that's not the way we want you to take the 5e. That's not what we want you to do with Dungeons & Dragons. Meanwhile, over here, we have the third-party market that is just jumping in to fill that gap. And we have the third-party direct 5e support products. We have the third-party, let's use the engine to go in new and unusual ways. And we have the third-party, let's just copy 5e, but then do something different enough that it stands out. But erase all that and go back to the core of our numbers. D&D 5e number 1, but third-party 5e and 5e derivatives number 2. And Magic the Gathering, 80% of Wizards of the Coast money. Magic the Gathering. So if you don't take anything else away from this 20-minute rant of me talking about Wizards of the Coast and the direction of the 5th edition and what I think is going to happen with 5e, just take this with a grain of salt. For that small, diminishing population of people who are holding on to this delusion of what Wizards of the Coast 5e Dungeons & Dragons means to the industry, numbers don't lie. You don't have to believe anything I say. You can tell me to fuck off and you don't agree with me, but the numbers are there. 80% of the money Wizards of the Coast is making Hasbro is Magic the Gathering. Hasbro could drop Dungeons & Dragons tomorrow, skid by for the next 5 years off the residuals and be perfectly fine. They could give D&D to some other company. They could just abandon it and let the OGL take it over. Whatever. They're still going to make their money for at least 5 to 10 years, but because of the media rights and whatever. But if Wizards of the Coast Hasbro ever dumped Magic the Gathering, that's 80% of their income. That would doom them. And why is that? Because Magic the Gathering is 100% pure profit. Numbers don't lie. Anyway, that's enough for this nonsense. If you appreciate this stuff, let me know. If you don't appreciate this stuff, let me know. Where do you think the 5e engine should go? Because obviously, I think most of us agree the 5e engine is not Dungeons & Dragons. Most of us agree that the direction Wizards of the Coast is taking 5e is not the way 5e should go, is not the direction we want Dungeons & Dragons to go. The sales speak for itself. I don't have to make shit up. The fact that Wizards of the Coast is just basically disavowing anything that came out in the last year / much less last week. Radiant Citadel? What's that? We never made anything called Radiant Citadel. When was the last time you heard us talk about it? Yeah. Wizards of the Coast, for whatever reason, sees what the writing on the wall, but they're going to continue to make the D&D they think we want until those numbers drop. And those numbers are dropping. So what do you think? What is the direction and the evolution of 5e as we get close? Because 2024 is coming up, and we know Wizards of the Coast is going to change D&D again in 2024. I'm sorry to anybody who thinks otherwise, but Wizards of the Coast has made it perfectly clear that they're going to do it again. Okay? So Dragons of Stormwick Isle is the last box set. They're not going to change the rules ever again. No, that's bullshit. They are. Anyways, I've talked about this enough. If you appreciate this content, let me know. If you don't appreciate this content, let me know. What do you think? Where do you want to see the 5e engine go? What should Wizards of the Coast do with Dungeons & Dragons? And what do you want to see other third-party companies do with 5e over the next 2 to 5 years? The numbers don't lie, so we just got to see what's going to happen next. And congratulations to Goodman Games for taking the number 3 spot. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. 80. And, I can't complain because 80% of the income is Magic the Gathering, so my stock still is doing well. But yeah, suck it. Suck it, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. You only make 20%. The rest of the money is the stupid little cards. Suck it. And the third-party companies are kicking your ass. Suck it.